Greetings, I'm Steve Gustafson, the Zipline Guy. Normally, I'm out operating, building, or talking about zip lines. But this year isn't normal, as the world has been gripped by the coronavirus. While I was fortunate to operate an outdoor business with social distancing practices, others weren't as lucky. This became very apparent during my most recent visit to Las Vegas to see my good friend John Payne, former lead vocalist for the supergroup Asia. Normally, I'll commission John and his band to visit the studio and create music for our TV show. The casinos, camaraderie, great music and entertainment, and good food always makes for a great visit. But this visit was far from normal. Wearing masks, disinfecting surfaces, maintaining our distance, and the smell of hand sanitizer lingering in the air. With the microphones falling silent, no one knows the future of the industry. What's happening in Vegas isn't just in Vegas. Entertainment from New York to Nashville to Los Angeles and everywhere in between have all been shuttered. So these are my friends. Now I'm aware, and this is their story.
So my name is John Payne. I've been the lead singer of the band Asia for about 15 years. Now currently in the band Asia featuring my good self. And also I've got a couple of other projects that I work on. One which we haven't worked on for a while is GPS, and another one called Dukes of the Orient. I also have been out touring with Asia and friends basically. People like Lou Gramm and Kelly Keagy and Steve Jerry, Buck Dharma, doing their songs as well as the Asia songs using the Asia band. So I've been pretty busy. I also co-wrote a show in Vegas called Raid in the Rock Vault. And I did that for a couple of years, performed in it, and then relocated to Las Vegas where I live now. And I have my local recording studios.
This is Johnny Fedovich, and I'm here in Las Vegas at my home, in my home studio closet. And I'm originally from Northeastern Ohio, Canton, Ohio to be exact. And I've been in Vegas for about 22 years. In the local music scene, in the international music scene, playing with different artists.
So my name is Jamie Hosmer. I'm a musician, I'm a singer, songwriter. I play keyboards, and so in a couple different bands with John Payne. Asia featuring John Payne. Also another one of John's bands where it's lots of these great classic rock singers out in the front of the band. People like Lou Gramm, Steve Jerry, Tony Lewis, R.I.P. He's going to be missed dearly. Sometimes Mickey Thomas, Fee Waybill. We've got some fantastic singers.
My name is Carolyn Puffer. I am a backup vocalist for John Payne's Rock Pack. I also produce my own bands and shows along with my husband. Our show, Her Story of Rock, is the show where we pay tribute to all of the most famous rock chicks in history. And I also have an amazing all-female tribute to Journey called She Clips. And in addition to that, a cover band called Carolyn and Some Guys. And I also sing lead for an Iron Maiden tribute band called Aces High.
Jimmy Iker, originally from San Diego, California. Went to college in the Central Valley at Fresno State University. And shortly after college started touring with a local regional act, which led to bigger acts, basically.
Anyway, Jonathan Gilchrist. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, actually Henderson to be detailed. I have been part of a classic rock band known as Yellow Brick Road, and we had 2 weekly residencies. One was at Sunset Station at the Club Madrid showroom on Friday night from 10:30 to 12:30. And then Saturday night we had a residency at the Rocks showroom at Red Rock. I'm also the bass player and keyboard bass player, mandolin and violin guy in a Led Zeppelin tribute called Zeppelin USA that played primarily performing arts venues, performing arts theaters, and 2,000, 2,500 seat venues. But as of the beginning of 2018, I got invited to be part of Rock Pack. Jamie Hosmer had asked if I'd be willing to sub for him, and I said absolutely.
My name is Michael Cavanaugh, and I've been a professional musician my entire life. Most people know me for starring in the Broadway show Movin Out, which was a Billy Joel musical. I was the piano man in that show. And after that show ended, I put my own band together out here in Las Vegas, and we do a lot of corporate events, have been for years. And back in 2008, we started working with symphonies. We were one of the first symphony rock and roll shows that has really taken off. We have 4 different shows that we do now. Everyone from the Boston Pops, the National Symphony, all the way to the Malaysian Symphony, the Hawaiian Symphony.
I'm Stephen Lee. For the last 11 years, I've been working with Dinah and Marie as their guitar player, both with Dinah and Marie as a duo entity and with each of them as solo entities. They both tour independent of one another. In addition to that, I'm a member of a handful of project groups. I have a group made up of some of the best musicians in town, doing kind of a jazzy R&B thing with some originals and reharmonizations of pop tunes. Play in church with some musician friends of mine. I produce tracks for people. I do arrangements, do a lot of sessions. Fortunately, these days, you can receive your tracks through Dropbox and record your parts at home. So it's nice to be able to do a lot of your work in your bathrobe.
I grew up in a place called Luton in Bedfordshire, well, certainly for part of my childhood, which is in the UK. I then moved to Harpenden in Hertfordshire, which is a neighbouring county, where I resided until I moved to London when I was about 19 years old. I got really influenced by my uncle, who was a former mayor of London, as my grandfather was a former mayor of London, and my uncle was a multi-instrumentalist. So he got me my first guitar, and really that started the ball rolling. From 7, 8 years old, I knew I wanted to be a musician, and not many people know that. I actually started off playing guitar. I was also very interested, as I still am now, in the environment and animals. I was always outside as a kid, running around, climbing trees, having pet crows and ravens and hedgehogs and all those kind of things. And I wanted to be a veterinarian, but much to my parents' dismay, with all the private schooling I had, I ended up being a musician, which they were not very pleased with, in those early years. But that changed. But that was basically, the background of my childhood.
Parents bought a piano for the family when I was about 6 or 7 years old. I used to go to my grandparents' house on both my mom and dad's side. Both of them had pianos. And every time I went to one of their houses, I instantly went to the piano. It was the first place I went to. So my parents saw that I had a fascination and I had an attraction to the piano. So they bought a piano. I started taking lessons about 7 years old. And I was kind of the only one in the family that stuck with the piano lessons, right? My sister, she quit. I had a couple of cousins that would come to the house and take lessons. They quit. I've got a brother. I've got two brothers. One plays guitar and sings, one plays drums. So we always had a lot of music in the house. So I took lessons up until I was about 15 years old. And by that time, my early heroes were Billy Joel, Elton John. Those were the guys that I heard on the radio, and I saw on TV, and I thought, man, that's cool. I figured, I would kind of sit at the piano and pretend I was Billy Joel singing Miami 2017, or My Life. As I got into my teens, it really became clear to me that I wanted to do something in music. When I got out of high school, it was either going to be, okay, I'm going to try to go to music school. That was a big decision. It was either go to Berkeley or, hey, let's just hit the road and start playing.
And I did the latter.
Got out of high school, the band I was with, we hit the road, started playing the top 40 circuit around the country. And I look at those days as that's really where I kind of cut my teeth and kind of learned to do what I do. So that's kind of my background.
My parents tried to, instill piano lessons. And for whatever reason, I just rebelled. It didn't really work out. I drove my piano teachers nuts. So they figured, well, we don't want him to grow up hating it. So we'll just make it available. So I kind of discovered the piano on my own. That's what started it. And I would just tinker around on the piano, daily, but it was just making up melodies and just discovering the instrument. About 7th grade, when Van Halen came out that time, there was something about Eddie's playing that I don't play like that, but rhythmically speaking, it got a hold of me.
Started out in years ago in grade school playing the cornet, which is a version of the trumpet, a little shorter student kind of model of a trumpet. My brother played guitar a lot. He's older than I, and I always wanted to be in a band like Van Halen, and then my brother played guitar and I played drums. Like, oh my God, we could be like Van Halen. So he's always encouraged me to jam with him, and I always was on him to play, with me and have a brother band. And so that's how it kind of started. My family was like playing music all the time. My brother and sister really inspired me to listen to a lot of different music because they were listening to records and stuff. So I kind of, as the youngest kid in the family, I always listened to what they were playing and stuff. So it's always been music in the house and stuff. Even my dad played records, Simon and Garfunkel and Cat Stevens, and then old symphony stuff. I can't even remember what it was, but just crazy organ music and whatnot. But yeah.
So I've always been a singer. I was always in choir in grade school and high school, and always wanted to be a professional singer, but instead I had another path in my life, and I had a baby. And once she started to grow up and was entering high school, I realized I had to think about what I wanted to do with my life since I was in the middle of a divorce. So I had some encouragement from some people nearby. Gary Cooper and Calamity Jane were two people who really encouraged me to start singing. And so I did. In 2003, I joined a band, and I just wanted to sing the rock songs that I love to sing, and now I'm lucky that I get to be Las Vegas's rock chick here in town and get to sing the songs that I want to sing with the musicians that I want to play with. It's a big thing.
It is a big thing.
You know, it's who you spend your time with and who you are creative with. It's very important.
As far as something that got me into the industry, as a child, my dad used to take us to the circus and take us to concerts, and I remember how much I loved it, and thought it would be cool I was always intrigued by what was happening behind the scenes, and basically during my summers from college, I started working as a concert security guard, and saw guys that were setting up, doing lights and sound and setting up instruments and taking care of the artists. And when I asked them how much money they made, to me it sounded like a lot of money at the time. And I went and found a band to start working for. It was basically what got me going.
The first instrument I got was a snare drum. I was probably 7, or no, I think I was younger. I think I was like 5. And I played it and it was loud. And my family thought it was loud, and then one day it magically disappeared. And I still don't know what happened to it. And then when I was 7, my mom bought a piano. So as soon as she got the piano, I attacked it. I was all over the thing trying to make up songs the first day. And, you know, I still wanted to play. I knew music, even at that age, was all I cared about. So I had an older brother who played guitar, and he did not want me to touch his guitar. So when I was 10, I started sneaking in his room and I taught myself how to play guitar. So I've been playing guitar for a long time as well. Piano and guitar are my main instruments, as well as my voice, but I also play bass, and I did wind up playing drums because I was in so many bands and we would rehearse in our basement. There would always be a drum set down there, so I learned to play drums, play a little bit of saxophone, play a little bit of harmonica, play ukulele. I don't know if that counts as a different instrument than guitar, and I think that's all of them. I don't know, maybe the triangle. I think I play that too.
The old-fashioned triangle.
Yeah. Ding!
My life was pretty busy. I would go on the road with several different bands, one of them being Michael Cavanaugh, who was a star of a Broadway show called Movin Out. We go around, we do anything from a full symphony orchestra show with an orchestra behind us and the band out front. We also do a lot of private corporate shows, and then some just band-only shows, in a performing arts center. So I would might be a couple of gigs a month with Michael. Also work with John Payne.
John had contacted me initially, I think, through a referral through Jamie Hosmer, and John contacted me and I sent him some demos and videos and whatnot, and then he was initially hiring me for what they were calling the Rock Pack at the time, which was the band that backed up classic rock singers, Lou Gramm and Steve Algieri and Fee Wavell and Robin Zander, stuff like that.
Yeah, so Johnny Fedovich has been my drummer now for almost 15 years. And he also plays with John Payne, with Asia, featuring John Payne, as well as the Rock Pack. And it's great because John and I have a great relationship, and we're both really cool about, sometimes there's 2 gigs and we want to take care of Johnny. And it's the same thing with Jamie Hosmer. Jamie plays for me and he also plays for John. And we want our guys to get the best gigs they can, so sometimes we allow subs. And the subs are always top-notch guys, and the people that we're dealing with are all very responsible people. And if I call a guy like Jonathan Gilchrist, I am positive he could show up to a gig unrehearsed and nail it. I know him well enough. That guy's a phenom.
So my work schedule is pretty busy. It was pretty busy. In 2018, 2019, I I would work probably 4 days a week here in Las Vegas. Anything more than that was way too much for me at my age. But then the rest of the time I'd be doing fly out dates, you know, so like leave Friday, play a gig on Saturday, fly back Sunday, or it'd be midweek, you know, fly out Wednesday, play 2 shows, come back on Saturday. So prior to this, I was very busy, playing probably 4 days a week, and then playing on tour or flying out to dates like 3 times, 4 times a month. It varies, you know. We'd fly to Hawaii, play there for 3 days, come back, or you know, fly out to Wisconsin, come back, you know, play fairs and whatnot with Asia. And then with Michael Cavanaugh, I'd play with their symphonies. We do our symphony shows, and that was usually a 2-day deal, you know, fly out, play a show on Friday, play a show on Saturday, come home Sunday, sometimes do a matinee on Sunday. I was very busy.
I would say that I was on the road for a total of 10 months each year, both 18 and 19. Starts usually around the end of February or early March and goes until end of November, early December, with only a few breaks in between. Most of the tours that I've been assigned to since I started working for Live Nation as a promoter rep generally last anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks. So oftentimes after I finish a tour, there can be a day or 2 off, and sometimes none at all. I'll jump right onto another one, fly to another city, get with a new band, and starting shows immediately. So generally in those 10 months that I'm working, if I have 2 to 3 weeks off total, and that being only a couple of days at a time, that's a pretty good amount of time. So I'm fairly busy for 9 to 10 months out of both 2018 and 2019.
Typically, a year for me would consist of 25 to 35 weeks a year, 5 nights a week at the Flamingo with Donnie and Marie, doing 1 show a night, 7:30 to 9. Many nights, well, actually for the last 4 years, I was playing in a gig at Caesar's Palace right across the street, a group called Pop Strings Orchestra. Rhythm section, 2 singers, trumpet, tenor, and 2 violins, 2 violas, and 2 cellos. It was basically for dance, and it was everything from Bruno Mars to Bon Jovi arranged for that instrumentation. So every weekend I'd park at Caesar's, walk across to the Flamingo, do Donnie Marie, then walk back across the street to Caesar's, play that gig, and then drive home from there.
Just about every week I was at the airport. I was at the airport flying off for a gig. Sometimes I was at the airport flying off for 2 gigs. And then I'd come home and I'd be back at the airport in a few days going to somebody else's gig. It was busy. I mean, it was nonstop. And if I wasn't on the road, I was in here in the studio working on something. Working on a project that had come in. Also, I had a regular Thursday night gig here in Vegas as well at a Red Rock Casino in Rock's Lounge. It was a yacht rock band. So all that great soft rock sounds of the 70s, Kenny Loggins, Michael McDonald, Christopher Cross, Toto. We had a band that we played every Thursday. It was nonstop pre-COVID.
When I was at school, they didn't have music lessons. And in fact, I ended up teaching guitar at school at 14, and they paid me to teach guitar. I had 1 lesson while we were on holiday on the coast when I was about 9 or 10 years old, playing classical guitar. The rest of it self-taught. I don't actually read music, as a lot of rock musicians don't, read music. Clapton's, the Jimmy Pages, and all those people. They actually, then it goes more from brain to fingers, I believe, as a guitarist. But I'm not a trained musician. Guitar was my first instrument, and I played guitar in a 3-piece band that was more like Hendrix, Robin Trower type stuff, and was the lead vocalist until I saw a guy called Eddie Van Halen play, I think in 1978 at the Rainbow in London. And I was a young kid, full of myself, best guitarist in town, all that kind of stuff. And I saw this guy playing and went, okay, I'm going to be a vocalist now. You can't, And also Michael Schenker from the Schenker Group was on the same bill. So it was just basically a wake-up call to find my direction.
What led me to Las Vegas was I was living in Seattle, Washington at the time. My brother and his wife moved here prior to me coming, and he had me convinced. It took some convincing, but he told me that I could definitely make a better living as a professional musician in Las Vegas. At the time, I didn't see it, but he suggested, why don't you just put together a demo, because there's a couple of bands that I go and see in the casino lounges that I think they would really like. If they knew about you, I think they would really like you. So that's what happened. I put together a 10-minute CD that just had a variety. It was just original stuff. It was a variety of all the different instruments I sang, and there was like an a cappella vocal piece on there. There's stuff on there that featured violin and flute and sax and mandolin and harmonica and just the different instruments I played, guitar, keyboards. So I put together a promo CD. I sent my brother a handful of them, and he delivered it to a band, and they were immediately excited, and they flew me out to audition me. They put me up in a hotel, paid for my airfare. They gave me a list of like 5 songs to learn, and I did it, and that's what led me to Las Vegas full time.
Moved to Las Vegas in 2013. I was recruited by John Payne, who was just opening his show Raiding the Rock Vault. It was then called the LVH Hotel and is now the Westgate. But was recruited to come be basically the project coordinator / GM of his show.
About the end of the 90s, we started getting the idea of maybe we should move to Vegas. We had some friends out in Vegas, we had people that we had met, and we heard things were really booming at that time. So we kind of made some phone calls, and people were like, yeah, come on out, you guys will do really good out here. And so I came out by myself for 1 week, the very beginning of 2000, January of 2000. And I brought some promo. At that time it was still VHS tapes and photos, actual photos. But I had a bunch of promo packs for myself and for my wife, Maria. And we met with some people, met with some friends of ours who introduced us to, some band leaders, some agents and stuff like that. And after a few days, actually I got a gig. Actually got a gig while I was in town. I extended my stay and actually played a gig over the weekend. And by the time I was ready to leave, I had a really good feeling about things. I was like, we can make a living here. Because at that time, the Venetian had just opened. Mandalay Bay had just opened. All these places were brand new. And bands were everywhere. Bands were playing around the clock at that time. So I was like, this is a good spot for us. So I called my wife. I said, Maria, I think we should do this, So I got an apartment, flew back, and I think it was a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks later, we drove out. And actually, one other piece of the story is, I had a singer in town told me, if you can come back by, maybe it was like February 1st or something, I'll give you 2 weeks of work with me at Mandalay Bay. She handed me a stack of cassette tapes. Here's my material, learn this. And so that's what I did. So with a promise of 2 weeks of guaranteed work we packed up all our stuff and moved across the country.
Plenty of stops in between before getting here to Las Vegas. I just played locally in Cleveland, Ohio, and Northeastern Ohio for years and years and years. Started getting, reputation with other musicians and stuff. So eventually made my way out to LA and lived in Los Angeles for a while. Went back to Cleveland with a band, and then came back to LA, back and forth, playing and touring across the United States. And then had an offer to come to Las Vegas and have a residency here. And was able to just set up shop here, play locally, go to LA and do record showcases and play, do studio stuff out there, come back. So LA is only 4 hours, so it was easier to commute back and forth to get try to get a record deal and stuff, and work the industry from Vegas than it is from Ohio, just 4 days away. So
I moved to Vegas for business, but I was living in LA before then, and I co-wrote a show in 2012 with an entrepreneur, a record producer, and a really cool guy called David Kirschenbaum, who produced many, many big records. And we co-wrote this show, and we did a show in LA and videoed the show, and went to one meeting at the LVH, which was formerly where Elvis had his show, 860 sellout performances, and they basically signed us on the spot. So then in 2013, in January, I moved to Las Vegas and lived in a hotel for a year and a half before actually moving to Henderson, which is adjacent to Las Vegas. So that show became very successful and was the #1 musical in Vegas. So it was a nice thing for my first ever script.
In 1993, I moved to Las Vegas. My daughter was just a small child, and we basically moved here because California was just way too expensive for a young family to purchase a home. And at the time, Las Vegas was booming. So we bought a great house, big house for really inexpensive in Green Valley, which is here near Las Vegas. And I've been here ever since, and I love it. And there's no other place I'd rather be.
A couple of my favorite points in my career. One was getting to work with the Dalai Lama. He came over to the U.S. for speaking engagements, and I got to go to a handful of them, and basically be around him and listen to each one of his speeches and him take questions from mostly college students. Was pretty amazing. That was definitely a high point.
I feel blessed that I've been able to earn a living playing music, right, for my entire life. So I feel blessed with that, being able to say that.
People most know me for my role in Movin' Out as the piano man, the guy singing and playing all the songs. I was the guy on the poster. I was the guy on all the commercials. And that was really the role that changed my life. And a show or anything like that going on. I was just hoping maybe one time I'd get to shake Billy Joel's hand once. So I met Max, like I said, and then a couple months later, Billy was coming into town for a concert, and Max decided to surprise me and bring Billy to the piano bar to hear me. So that was a pretty crazy night, obviously. And it was a dueling piano, two pianos up like this, and the first night I met him, he was on the piano across from me. We were jamming together that first night. It was crazy, right? Like I was like, you can kill me now. Yeah, seriously, I was freaking out. And then Billy Joel's guitar player, who was his musical director, he's been with Billy since 1989, Tommy Burns, good friend of mine. He said, no, we're looking for someone to be the piano man of the show, to sing every song in the show, to really be the quarterback. So he said, would you come to New York? And I said, yes, you better believe it. And Billy had already heard me in the piano bar, and he liked me. He said, I think Cavanaugh would be great.
So I guess my claim to fame is that I have finally gotten to produce my own show with my husband. We came up with the idea, and we choose all the songs, and we play with our friends who we love. We make all of the videos for the show, and I create all the costumes for myself and the dancers. And we've had a great time doing our own show. Again, singing the songs that I want to sing, and being able to play music with my husband is pretty great.
Claim to fame. I'm sure that a lot of musicians are after fame. For me, it's been a quest for musical fulfillment. And I've had a lot of great moments because I've been blessed to work with some incredible musicians in my lifetime. Both doing the lounge scene, where we were able to play music that we found personally fulfilling. For me, the thrill of that is bright. Certainly touring and playing with Donnie and Marie and playing in arenas, with 10, 15,000 people is a highlight. At sound check in a big arena, when you're playing by yourself, and you hear the 5-second reverberation coming from the back of the hall, it really gives you the illusion you're really doing something.
There have been a few high moments in my career, and I can't exactly point to one. One of the most amazing things was, as I was saying earlier, my parents wanted me to keep on my studies with veterinary and either do that or be a doctor. They always want your son to be a doctor or a lawyer. Those are the two big things. And I was on the road to becoming a veterinarian with my interest in animals. And my parents took it quite badly. I was never encouraged much to play guitar. I was more discouraged, which made me want to play it more. As a young kid, you can sometimes want to rebel. And in fact, I still actually have my second guitar at this house, which disappeared along the road. But in 1992, I believe, we did 2 sellout shows promoted by Harvey Goldsmith at the Town and Country Club in London, a well-known venue. And my dad came to that show, my mum came to that show. And it was a very tearful scene after the end of the show. And my dad came down to the dressing room and hugged me and goes, "I was wrong. You took the right path." And we both broke down. It was a great moment. We hadn't been estranged, but they were like, "Oh, there he is. Ne'er-do-well. He's not gonna make any money doing music." So it was kind of a nice moment. Another nice moment was my first gig with Asia, apart from a test gig in London, was in Japan at the NHK Hall. And it was sold out. I think it held about 6,000 people. And it was my first big show of that size in my life. So that was really cool. I can say another 2 cool moments. One was we did a festival in Estonia to 250,000 people, which was amazing. And then I did a multi-bill for a charity at the Joe Robbie Stadium, which is a football stadium in Florida, where we played with the Bee Gees, Paul Simon, all that to 80,000 people, and it was televised. And I'm sure there's many other great moments that, I can say when we wrote a song, or when you first hear, I remember first hearing Who Will Stop the Rain, which is off Aqua, on the radio driving along, and then switching the station, it was on the other station at the same time. So those are kind of cool things.
The last gig I had was as the show accountant for Gwen Stefani's It's a Girl residency at Planet Hollywood Hotel and Casino.
So my last public gig was in Owensboro, Kentucky with the Owensboro Symphony with me and my band. And then 2 days later on March 9th, I did a corporate event in Mexico. I think it was in Guadalajara. I think it was. It was in Mexico. And it was an event that I thought for sure they were going to pull the plug, but they didn't pull the plug, and I was happy. But that was the last live performance I've done.
My kind of official last gig, or what I thought was the last gig, was the 80s Rock Cruise. There's a cruise out of Florida, Fort Lauderdale, every single year. There's a rock cruise, there's I think a metal cruise, and an 80s cruise. And we were invited for the second time to come back to be one of the bands. Funnily enough, COVID was just starting to gain ground. This was like March the 3rd, and some of the bands didn't turn up. And the people were very grateful that we did turn up, because they were just starting to really start close down in America. And when we came off the ship on March the 15th, we went around all the Bahamas, that the news was America was completely shut down, and we had to be temperature checked and everything as we got off the boat. So it was very worrying. Between then and now we're in November 2020, I did 2 actual shows. One with a full band on July the 3rd in Texas, the day before their huge shutdown. And in fact, they argued with the mayor who put it on, argued with the governor, and the governor said he was going to prosecute him for our show, but it didn't happen. And then in July, I believe, I went up to Eagle River and did a solo show. That was my last show. I did one in between then, just in a restaurant, unplugged with a band, just to keep our oar into the music industry. But I did this one-man show which kept within regulations. I had a backing track of the whole band, and I played bass or guitar and sang live on it, and it worked very well. But really, those are just tiny specks of shows compared to the 30 or 40 that we got cancelled up until now because of COVID-19.